Welcome to What in the World, a project initiated by Hungry for Life International. Today's podcast is titled Wendy's Blog, and Jess will be interviewing Wendy Moore. So grab your headphones, sit back, relax, and listen as Wendy talks about her take on Jesus' intended purpose of mercy.
Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to another week of the What in the World podcast, where we talk about all things to do with running a global nonprofit and specifically about compassion and mercy, which is today's topic, mercy. So we have one of our staff here today, Wendy Moore, and she wrote, first of all, welcome here.
Thank you.
Wendy does finance in our office, specifically project reporting, right?
Project finance, and now more specifically with direct financial, clerical, administrative, bookkeeping, that kind of thing.
She's our hero, is what she's trying to say. Her and Christy run our finance department, right, and we are forever indebted to them. So thanks for taking time out of, I know Christy's probably going to be chomping at the bit for you to get back. So how long have you been at Hungry for Life for?
I think I joined in 2008. So that's 14 years now?
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
I think 2008. So
wow.
Yeah, 14 going on 15 years now.
I would consider you one of the OGs, original gangsters here.
Part of the furniture by now,
yeah. So, and a bit about yourself. You have a husband and a daughter. And
I have a husband, 3 children.
Yep.
One in Abbotsford, one in Hamilton, Ontario, and one in Sydney, Australia.
Right. And where are you from, if people have heard her accent?
Oh, I'm from South Africa.
South Africa.
So, yeah. Moved here in 2007, was introduced to Hungry by Jackie Orantes.
Oh, really? That's how you came here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. We were attending the same church, and when we moved here, she said, you may be interested. And came in here, met Chad, was really nervous because I was still new to Canada. And so, yeah.
Well, thanks, Jackie, for the recruit.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So Wendy wrote a beautiful blog post about mercy, and you can find it, we will be releasing the blog on the same day as this podcast.
Okay.
So people can find it on our website or through our social medias. And she really dove down deep into what mercy is and has some insights on this. And so I asked her to come share her thoughts on mercy.
Happy to.
Mercy is deeply intertwined in the work that we do here at Hungry for Life. But to be honest, the word itself doesn't come up a whole lot in our day-to-day planning. I would say there's a pretty strong undercurrent of mercy in like why we do what we do, and it's great to remember that word and specifically what God meant for how this word should be enacted in our faith and in our work. And compassion is kind of the theme around here.
Right.
We do a lot of that, but compassion without mercy is something I want to talk about today.
Sure.
First of all, what inspired you to write this blog?
I think it's probably comes from years of study and just thinking about what is a human person. What does it mean to be human? And over the years, I've realized that God created man to have a meaningful relationship with him. It wasn't just we were just another animal that was created on the earth, along with, elephants and dogs, and there was a special purpose for man. And so what does it mean to be a human person? And that we are created in his image. And so that led me into a study into his nature and how when we become in relationship with him, we take on his nature. So I've just been reading a lot of books. Probably one book that really impacted me was Confessions by Augustine, who was a theologian, I think in the 900s. And I forget the date, but he said that we were created with a God-sized hole in our heart. And I'm kind of paraphrasing it a little bit, but that only that hole in our heart can be filled by God. So we were created for God's pleasure, and and we really become fully in our human natures when we fully embrace God in our lives. And so the more we get to know God, the more we get to know ourselves, and the richer our existence is. And so one of the aspects of God's nature is his mercy. Yes, he is compassionate, but he's also merciful. And there's so many scriptures in the Bible that talk about mercy. And so, digging into that, what does it mean to be merciful? And so doing some reading, and, I when I did this originally, I did it because I learned something. And when you learn something that's great, you want to share it with other people. And so it's nothing that I thought out of my own head. It's me, digging into subjects and standing on the shoulders of other gracious people who are a lot smarter than me, but who share their thoughts and tell me, and help me to understand God and his nature. And so when we truly understand God and his mercy, then we truly understand who he is, and we can better be his disciples and be a better person, being a human person. So that's really what got me into it, was trying to understand God's nature and what it means to be human in relation to him. So
in your studies, what's the definition of mercy that you came up with, or how would you define mercy?
I would define mercy as a step beyond compassion. I think we can all have compassion. We all through life see things and we are compassionate toward. But mercy is acting on that compassion. So I can see a stray dog, and often I actually share this in the blog, and I'm not sure how far. I haven't seen the blog that's going to be posted, but oftentimes I'll see somebody suffering, like maybe driving past a homeless person on the road, and I'll drive past them and I'll think, oh, what has happened in your life that has brought you to this particular place in right here and now, that you are living on the side of the street, suffering, and obviously there's trauma. And I might drive past and feel sorry for them, but I keep driving. But mercy is when I act on that compassion, when I stop the car, I get out, and I meet the person, and two hearts are connected, and two lives are changed because we have become entwined with each other in an act of mercy. And it comes back to even our relationship with God, because there comes a time when we realize how depraved we are as human beings, and we realize, okay, I need help here, and it's only when God steps down in the form of Jesus Christ, dies for us on the cross, and we fully come face to face with that depraved situation that we're in, that we realize just how merciful he is. And that's why I think mercy is such a big part of the biblical scriptures. There's so many scriptures where we, especially in the Psalms, David often cried out to God, Lord, have mercy on me. And we don't actually say that nowadays. When we say the word mercy, we think it's an old word. It's like,
have mercy.
Have mercy. Yeah, I mean, it's something that you might read out of a 19th or an 18th century novel. I mean, people today don't say have mercy. They might say, oh, clemency or something like that in a court. But mercy is really at the heart of who God is. It's not what he is. It's who he is. It's his nature. He's merciful.
It's so interesting to me that, like, it might just be my personality, or it might just be the culture that we as North Americans live in, but like we can be, I find it quite easy to be compassionate. Like, it's not hard to have compassion on somebody, but to act that out, being that mercy, it's I almost forget about mercy. Like I almost think like, well, we have so much opportunity to donate to that cause or that
Right.
cause or that cause, but do you think that's missing the mercy aspect, or would you consider that mercy?
I think, no, I think that's definitely compassion, and God is definitely a compassionate God. But when you think of the parable of the Good Samaritan, he actually got off his donkey, walked over to the ditch, picked up the man, put him on his mule, took him to an inn, and so his life became more than just, throwing, I don't want to say throwing money, but giving to a cause, right? And so you become entwined with that. And I think when we realize just how deep a merciful act is in our own personal lives, like I said, when you come face to face with God's mercy in our lives, it's powerful. It makes us realize just how big that act was on the cross. There was a great story that I heard long time after I gave my life to God. I think I gave my life to God in my early 20s, and then in my 30s, I had a watershed moment. And I think we all do. We all have watershed moments where life makes a definite turn. And I was driving in my car, and I was listening to a tape by a professor, and he was talking about this lady in Africa who was a human delivery truck. And what she would do is she would go from one auto mechanic shop to another, and she would deliver engine blocks on her head. And so she would take it from one and then deliver it to the next one. And the one day they helped her to put the engine block on her head, and then she would take it and deliver it to the other place. And when she got to the other place, there was nobody there to help her take the engine block off. And so she tried to take it off herself, and she broke her neck and she was killed. And the professor was saying, that's how we are. We have this weight of sin on our heads, and we can't take it off ourselves. And that's where God's mercy comes in, because yes, because of sin we deserve death, but he said, don't worry, I'm going to give you mercy, and I'm going to take that away. And I just remember pulling over in the car and just weeping, just absolutely sobbing, because you suddenly realize how depraved we are. And I think that's what we need to live out in our lives when we express mercy to other people, is the same as what God in his mercy reaches down to us. We have the opportunity to reach to people who are really struggling and hurting, and we can say, as much as Christ has done this for me, I'm here to help you with this, and to participate with what he's doing in your life right now. And so, yeah, I think mercy is more than just a kind thought or a generous gift. Mercy is when my heart meets with another person, and love is expressed, which is also part of God's nature.
Well, we have a good example, or you wrote it in your blog, but it's kind of a Hungry for Life story about Tillahoon.
Yeah.
Can I just read that part of your blog?
Yeah.
A few years ago, Hungry for Life had our partners from around the world share stories with their staff. Our partner Tillahoon in Ethiopia shared his story of a Canadian woman, Angela Green, who came to Ethiopia to minister to the street children, of which Tillahoon was one. Living on the street, not bathing for many years, he was deeply moved by Angela giving him a hug, and how that simple act changed the trajectory of his life. That was an act of mercy from one person toward another, an action of the heart of one human moving toward another, allowing them to breathe. And I love that example.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that was a watershed moment for them, right? And I think, we all have those moments where suddenly you realize and it's a connection of the heart. I mean, not that I wrote it in the blog, but I remember when Tilohun was sharing that. He'd been on the street for a number of years, and he said it was the first time that somebody touched him, like physically touched him, and to give him a hug. And I mean, when somebody is so lonely and so in such tragic situations, for somebody to come in and break down that wall and connect like that it's phenomenal. And I mean, it's God can do amazing things when we are willing to share our hearts with others and express His love to other people. So,
well, I even think of our upcoming trip that we're leaving on Sunday. Wendy and I are going to Ukraine, and you know, the decision to go there for me was Mercy was a player in that, for sure, because we could have packed suitcases and sent them, but the act of delivering them and going and hearing their stories, and sitting with them, from one human heart to another human heart.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
No, I mean, I love what some people have called it, a ministry of presence, right? Because yes, we don't speak the language, we don't, we cannot communicate. But the fact that you're there, that you can touch somebody, you can look them in the eye, and who knows what God can do through that. One thing I know is His hand is not short, and He can reach across cultures, He can reach across language barriers. We just have to say, I'm here to participate in what you're doing, and make us your instruments. So
let's talk about you had a quote in here, mutual giving of oneself. What does that mean? And what does that mean?
Well, I think...
Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, we are. So if we go back to Tilohun and Angela Green, there has to be a reciprocation from one heart to the other, right? Because yes, Angela Green got up and gave him a hug, but he could have been like, "Oh, I don't want this hug. Who are you to touch me? I don't like being touched," or whatever. But when there's a meeting of the hearts, something amazing happens. It's the same with our conversion. When our heart is open to God and He connects with us, it's amazing. I mean, something absolutely phenomenal happens. And it's not like, okay, you had this moment and you had this moment. It's God deals with us in the particular. My moment on the side of the road, listening to a cassette and having a watershed moment there for my spiritual walk, is not the same for everybody. We don't all drive down the car and listen to a tape and have that. It's different. And so, but it's when our hearts connect with other people in a meaningful way that I think really true mercy happens. Because it's not just a compassionate thought. And I know in the blog I mentioned, like, I can have an act of mercy towards my dog or my cat, right? Maybe that's got a sore paw or something, and I'm trying to fix it. And there's no meeting of hearts. In fact, if anything, there's swatting of claws, right? Because they don't want to be touched because they're hurting. But when it happens on the human level, it's so different, because there is that connection at the heart level, at the deep soul level, that something amazing happens. There's a connection of love. There's a connection of we're in this together. I'm here for you. It's so much more than just an occasional thing. Like, for instance, if I get pulled over for a ticket, a speeding ticket, right? And the guy comes over to me and he's like, "Well, you were speeding, so I need to give you a ticket." And I'll say, "Oh, have mercy on me." And he's like, "Okay, I'll let you off this time." Okay. And I drive away and I think, phew, I got away with that, right? That's not mercy. That was just a kind gesture. Mercy is when it happens at a deep heart level, because I'm not connected to that police officer, and he's definitely not connected to me. But yet I got off with something, right? And people will say, oh, he was merciful. Yes, but I think I would like to say that mercy is a little bit more. It's a little deeper connection at the heart level. If we really want to understand what God is when he's merciful, and when David says, Lord, have mercy on me.
Yeah. In fact, in your blog, I love the examples that you give in Scripture about Isaiah, Job, and Paul. Maybe I'll just quickly read it. You say, like Isaiah says, I am doomed when he realizes who he is before the majesty of God.
Right.
Job acknowledges that he now sees God for who he really is. And Paul says he was the worst of the worst.
Right.
But God had mercy on him. And I love that you included that, because it really humanizes it for us today, that we are all in need of mercy.
Right.
No matter where we come from or what type of resources we have.
Right.
God calls us to connect at the heart level. And I think it's easy for sometimes, like in the work that we do here, for us North Americans to feel superior, or we have resources that we can give. Well, no, like the ground is level at the foot of the cross. And, like, that's why we send teams. As controversial as that can be for some people, sending teams versus just the money, right? Mercy happens there. The heart connection happens there. And I would love to sit down with all of our team members and get their take on that. But I think I actually asked you this. My thought was, can we really give God mercy without? Oh wait, no, that was from your blog. That was not my thought. But a thought was that you wrote down was, can we really give God mercy without completely surrendering our own nature to God, allowing him to completely live in us and thereby give his mercy to those in need? What do you think? Can we?
Well, I don't know if we can give mercy to God, but I do think when his mercy is expressed to us, we connect at the heart level. And that is why Christianity is such a powerful religion. It's because we realize the sacrifice that our Creator has made for us. Like he so badly wants us to live in relationship with him, that he will take the very thing that separates us from him, which is our sin, and he himself offers himself up as a sacrifice so that we can have that relationship with him. Like, he does all the work in this. The only thing we bring is a grateful and accepting and willing hearts. But it happens at the heart level. It happens within us. And that is why, it's so powerful across cultures. It's powerful across language barriers. It's powerful across intellectual levels. It doesn't matter how smart you are. God can work with you at the heart level because of these deep-seated values that he has, or not values, but the very essences of his character is universal. Like, so it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, North America, Africa, Indonesia, Australia. It doesn't matter. God can work with that, because that's an innate value or an innate yearning that the human heart has. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the God-sized hole. That's part of who God created in human beings. And if you're a human being, you've got that yearning within you.
I vaguely remember. Do you remember the Donut Man?
No.
Oh, it's like this kid.
Oh.
Adam, do you remember the Donut Man? No. Well, the God-sized hole. So he used donuts as that example. It was a kid's video, and that's like ingrained in my head.
Oh, okay.
And they used the Timbit. They didn't call it a Timbit. It's not a Canadian show, but and that was like the example of God filling. And forever, like I didn't know it came from that theologian. I thought it came from the Donut Man, but
Oh, okay.
But it's like some valuable points there. You included an interesting passage I want to read, which is Matthew 23, verse 23. You Pharisees and teachers are show-offs, and you're in for trouble. That's harsh. You give God 1/10 of your spices from your garden, such as mint, dill, and cumin. Let you neglect the more important matters of the law, such as justice, mercy, and faithfulness. These are the important things that you should have done, though you should not have left the others undone either.
Right.
That's such... What do you think is key for Jesus followers today in remembering to show mercy?
Well, I think I put that scripture in because what struck me in that is that sometimes we can get very wrapped up in programs and having to do things, how-tos. And
religion, you mean?
Yeah, if I can say that. But I mean, we just get very wrapped up in like, this is how to pray. This is how to build a church. This is how to do nonprofit ministry. And I'm not saying that the how-tos and the frameworks are not important, but we do need to remember the weightier things of mercy, justice, and faith. And a lot of it also comes from, and I think a lot of it comes when we deal with our families, because I think that's where we learn mercy, is in our family. Because if you, as a family, you have rules like, okay, if you don't put your clothes away, or you don't pick up your dirty clothes, or you don't put away your toys, or whatever, you are not getting screen time. Okay, that's the rules, that's the law. Okay, but sometimes things happen in a child's life, or in a mom's life, or in a dad's life, where because you had these certain rules in place and they didn't happen, okay, so are you just going to come down on them like a ton of bricks, or you're going to say, okay, I know today was a hard day, and I realize you haven't picked up your clothes, but I would like you to do them now, and then you can still have your screen time. Because they need to learn mercy somewhere. And I think sometimes the Pharisees were so wrapped up in the rules and the laws and the programs of the day that there was no room for mercy. There was no room for justice. It was cut and dried. And I think it was, for us today, we need to realize, like a loving God, sometimes there is room for mercy, and there is room for compassion, and there is times when the moral law is more important than the physical law. So
it's interesting. Just on Sunday at church, our pastor was talking about the Pharisees and how they came with all their good intentions. Their goal was to bring people back to Christ and to not let them stray. So how are we going to not let them stray? Let's create all these different rules.
Right.
So that, like down to like, he used the example, like on the Sabbath, they couldn't spit because spitting would create mud, and mud is work. Or, it was crazy. Yeah. But like, that's not what Christ intended. No. Like, his love and mercy supersedes all that.
Oh, for sure.
And so, that's, we could do a whole nother podcast on the balance of that all, but just an interesting thought.
I think sometimes and I think it's very typical of a North American culture, if I can call it that, where we get very wrapped up in there's certain ways to do things, and yes, you do need that, like any home.
You need ground rules.
You need ground rules, but there are times when, you need to be able to say, it's okay to be merciful in this situation, because how will we ever learn mercy if it's not modeled to us? And so I think it's important that the church shows mercy to people. That actually everybody, in any walk of life, whether we are Christian or not Christian, to be merciful is to be a person that people will respect and admire. True mercy. It's a wonderful value, but it's a value that we get purely from God, because He is mercy, as he is love, he is mercy. He is truth. Yeah, he is also mercy. So it's who he is.
Thank the good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're nearing the end of my pages here. But you put in a C.S. Lewis quote from the Four Loves that I want to read. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, and irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. Wow, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
The coffin of your selfishness.
Yes.
Ooh. Now, that doesn't convict everybody. I give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any final thoughts before I close it off here?
I mean, I think there was a movie I watched about C.S. Lewis's life called Shadowlands, and he talks about the pain of loving, because there is it is painful to love, because if you said, okay, I'm not going to love anything, not even an animal, then yes, you don't get hurt. But when you love something truly and deeply, and it's reciprocated, man, it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, you love your little baby, and your baby smiles back at you, and I tell you, there's nothing sweeter in this world, or with your spouse, and you connected at a heart level, and you're deeply in love with each other. There's no greater blessing in life. And it's the same with us and God. When we're in love with him and he loves us, it's beautiful, and it's precious. But in any relationship, when we break or go contrary, or we sin, or maybe we're unfaithful to our spouse, or we are a rebellious child, or it hurts, it's painful, and there's a disquiet in our souls, but so to love, we become very vulnerable. But when it's a rich love like that between us and God, or between a faithful husband and wife, or between mom and dad and children, between family, man, it's the best thing, because God is love. And when you really experience it at a deep level, there's nothing richer in life. And that's what we want to share. I mean, as Christians, we want to say that there is this amazing relationship that you can have. Doesn't matter where you've been. Doesn't matter what life you've gone through, what you've done in the past. I mean, there was Apostle Paul. I mean, he was a pretty nasty person, and I think sometimes we forget that. I know I was just thinking the other day when I was reading scripture, and I love his writings, but he was a piece of work before God converted him.
Yeah, he was. He didn't use Christians as his tiki torches?
Yeah, and so he was not a nice person. But
mean guy.
But again, it comes back to that God's merciful heart connecting with him and bringing him in and bringing him into a relationship where, in the end, he died for his relationship with God, and and we have that too, and we can share that with others. Doesn't matter what happened, doesn't matter where you've been, doesn't matter what you've experienced. There is something amazing in having a relationship with Jesus. Just something deep and rewarding and fulfilling and closing up that hole in your heart. Yeah.
Well, it was a great piece of writing. Thank you so much for lending your talents to our blog.
Well, like I said, it's just what I've learned from other people and what I've read, and I think I did it for a Hungry for Life chapel one time. And
you did, yes. It was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just what I learned, and I think that's what it is. As Christians, we learn and we share and we encourage one another, and we correct one another, and we pray for one another, and it's part of our walk.
Well, lucky me, we have a 10-hour flight together, Wendy. We're going to have another podcast after this.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks so much for sitting.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I'll let you get back to the finances.
Yeah, to the mill of the work.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to What in the World, where we seek to educate and inspire. Here at Hungry for Life, we are passionate about your group having a global impact in eradicating needless suffering. For more information, head over to our website at hungryforlife.org, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you may listen to podcasts. Tune in every other week for another conversation about what is happening at Hungry for Life.